Hi, you're watching Word-Wise Living. On this episode, we're asking the question, how do we suffer well? In this series entitled From the Very Beginning, we're going to the first book of the Bible, Genesis, for hope and help. My goal in this series is to give you simple and practical truths that you can not only apply to your own life, but pass on to someone else. So far, we've seen that we have reason to hope, because when God speaks, darkness turns to light, chaos turns to order, and He fills the emptiness with life. And He's still speaking light and order and life into your life through His Word even today. We also understand our purpose. Being created as images of God, we are to declare who the King is and what His kingdom is like. Further, we learn what went wrong as sin entered the world and the consequences that it brings. And if we truly want to change, we need to do so at the heart level. Well, last time we looked at Abraham, and we found that he, like every one of us who are God's children, are simultaneously sufferers, sinners, and saints. We have these three competing storylines continually running through our lives. And it's important that we respond properly to each of them. Now, I briefly mentioned this last time, but as a sufferer, we should lament. As a sinner, we should repent. And as a saint, we should trust and obey. Well, in this video and the next couple of videos, I'm going to dig deeper into what each of those responses look like. The first one is that in our suffering, or as a sufferer, we should lament. I want to share with you about the biblical practice of lamenting. Lamenting is to simply declare that something is wrong in your world. Lamenting helps us to give words to our pain. Lamenting is the biblical practice of processing hurt. Lamenting is the proper way that we should respond to suffering. It doesn't matter if that suffering was caused by someone else, or if it's from natural causes, or even brought on by ourselves through sin and foolishness. Lamenting is the biblical practice of processing hurt, pain, disappointment, sadness, and suffering. Now, there are many examples of lamenting in the Bible. There's even an entire book called Lamentations, which is a long lament over the destruction of Jerusalem. But it's captured nowhere better than in the Psalms. Many of the Psalms are considered lament psalms because they capture the emotions and the sorrow of the psalmist. And when you read it, not only do you get a sense of the pain and the anguish of the author, but you can identify with it as well. Some of the lament psalms are Psalm 10, 22, 44, 77, and 88. But none of them capture it better or more simply than in Psalm 13. Now, I'm going to read Psalm 13 for us in just a moment, but I want you to see how it's divided up. It's 6 verses long, and it's divided up into 3 parts, 2 verses each. Part 1, Psalm 13. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Part 2. Look on me and answer, Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death, and my enemy will say, I've overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. Part 3. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. This psalm, like all laments, is directed toward God, because lamenting is not just therapeutic, it is theologic. It's theological. In the storms of life, we need an anchor for our soul, and that anchor is hope in God. Now, laments follow a certain pattern, especially if they're going to serve the purpose of processing our pain and suffering. And this pattern is seen very clearly in this Psalm 13. The first part of this pattern records a complaint. In this psalm, like many lament psalms, the author is listing off all that is wrong in his world. He feels abandoned. He feels attacked. His mind is full of worry and doubt, and his enemy is triumphing over him. But that's just the first part, the complaint. The complaint must continue on to part 2, which is crying out to God. Note what he says in the second part. Look on me and answer, Lord my God. He moves off of simply listing out all that is wrong, and he turns his cry to the Lord. Crying out to God is asking God for help, knowing that he will hear you. And when you cry to God, you are approaching the one who can do the most help. Your friend cannot help as much as God can. Your spouse cannot. Your random Facebook friends cannot help as much as God, your Redeemer, can. And as you cry out to God, it's not wrong to ask that God would change your circumstances, but even more so, you should be asking God for spiritual strength in those circumstances. Now, I want to make one note. Lamenting is not a one-and-done activity. As you lament over and over, they will grow and they will mature. In the beginning, perhaps you won't be able to get even past complaint. And maybe you'll be able to move on to complaint and crying out to God. But as you practice this, you will then move on to the third part, which is expressing confidence in God. Note in verses 5 and 6, but I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. This confidence in God is faith. And faith is choosing to believe in what you can't see. Have you been in situations where you think, I can't see how this is going to change, or I can't see any good coming from this, or I can't see how this is for my good? Faith is choosing to believe what you can't see. Confidence in God does not come from our current situation or circumstances. Confidence in God comes from his steadfast love and character, his salvation for his people, and his grace to us. Now, I want to leave you with some practical tips toward lamenting. First of all, is a book recommendation by Mark Vroegop. It's called Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy, and it's a great work that expands on this idea of lamenting. But in your suffering, I want to encourage you to lament. I want to encourage you in this biblical practice of processing your hurts and your pain. And I want to encourage you to write it down. Just like this psalm, you can write 2 lines of a complaint, 2 lines of crying out to God in request, and 2 lines of confident faith in God, his steadfast love and character. And then I want you to pray them. Pray them back to the Lord. It will reinforce his steadfast love to you. And then thirdly, share them. Share them with someone who can encourage you in your time of suffering. Beyond that, you can share this with someone who needs this. Is there someone in your life going through a difficulty? You can share this video with them. Give this a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed so you don't miss out on future videos. I'm Don Chapin. This is Word Wise Living.